Hi, thanks everyone for coming back so quickly after lunch. So as introduced, I am the DMD Hub manager. I'm based at the John Walton Muscular Dystrophy Research Centre in Newcastle, and my post is funded by Duchenne UK. And it's a real pleasure to be able to tell you, where we've come in this journey for the DMD Hub, with a little bit of a focus on how some of the tools and services that we've developed is of specific, use to the patients. So, as I've mentioned, the DMD Hub is a strategic partnership between the John Walton Centre and Duchenne UK. And I've been inspired by Emily and Volker's proverbs, so I've come up with one for the DMD Hub, which Emily might or might not have used in the past. But the proverb was, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I really think that, the collaboration that we have within the DMD Hub really shows the importance of working together, and that we really genuinely have this 360 view of being very patient-focused project, but also working in partnership with the clinicians and also with industry. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the journey so far. The journey started way back in 2016, and this was, before we had the DMD Hub, there was 2 clinical trial sites, and that was Newcastle and Great Ormond Street Hospital in London. But we realised that that wasn't going to be enough because of the pipeline of trials that was coming through, and actually we got to the point where there was trials that were being turned away from the UK because of all the work that we'd put in to make sure that that we had the opportunity to run trials in the UK for Duchenne. We knew that we had to do something about that. So what did we do? We created the DMD Hub, and today we have 11 DMD Hub sites, all able to run clinical trials across the UK. And this is all thanks to a massive investment of 3.3 million from Duchenne UK. About a third of that funding has come to Newcastle as part of the coordination team, but the rest of the funding is funded posts up and down the country at these 11 sites. So 34 posts in total have been funded, 72% of which have been sustained by the Trust, which, I think we should be really proud of that, and the Trust should be really proud of that as well. But we didn't just stop there. We didn't just fund the posts and say, good luck, get on with it. We've also developed this infrastructure where we've provide training and support, so the less experienced sites do, benefit from being in this network with the more experienced sites. And I think, Michaela asked me to look at this in particular because it was 34 posts that we funded, but actually within the network, there's over 121 staff that are engaged within the network. And that's, ranges from doctors, nurses, clinical trial coordinators, physiotherapists. So, I think that's a really great number as well. And then what that's enabled us to do is engage with industry. And I'm really confident to be able to say that, companies that are coming to the UK are engaging with the DMD Hub. I have regular conversations with them, and over 16, companies I have actually quite regular conversations with. And then more recently, we've started to engage with contract research organisations, which are the, the groups that then the companies employ to help run the clinical trials. But what I think is the most impressive statistic, or 2 statistics on this slide, is that since we've had the DMD Hub, we facilitated 60 clinical trials to come to the UK, which has enabled almost 600 boys to take part in clinical trials. Just as a little disclaimer, that is both interventional and observational natural history, but there is a huge proportion of that 600 that is interventional clinical trials. And when you're talking about rare diseases, where you're talking about 2-3 boys in a trial in a site at a time, that number has really increased. The other thing that this network enables us to do, and has recently enabled us to do, is to start to leverage funding by being involved in other projects. And both Duchenne UK and the John Walton Centre are involved in a project where we've got funding from, it's an EU project, but our part of the funding comes from IHI, which Bushra will talk about a little bit more. But that's 1.3 million, which is going towards staff and development of the DMD Hub infrastructure as well. But we've also more recently started to work with industry and generate income, which is going to help sustain the network moving forward. So this slide is really just to emphasize that in addition to the strategic partnership that we have between the DMD the DMD Hub for the John Walton Centre and the Duchenne UK, part of our success is because we do collaborate. You know, we are here to work with infrastructures that already exist, not to duplicate effort. And really, you know, I think we are becoming the partner of choice for people who are working in this area. I wanted to just let you know about also that there was a report that you might be aware of from the ABPI, which is the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry, way back in 2022, which suggested that the number of commercial clinical trials that was being initiated in the UK had dropped by, I think it's 41% in the previous 5 years, and that you know, had an impact on recruitment to commercially led studies, and that had dropped by 44%. So we went and looked, you know, is this the same for what's happened for Duchenne? And we were really reassured to see that actually the number of clinical trials, although there was a drop because of Brexit, because of COVID, for a period of time, by 2022, we were back up to the same number of clinical trials as we were in 2017. But I think what more importantly to say about that is that the pipeline of trials for 23, 24 continue to increase. And then we were given the opportunity to present this model, the DMD Hub model, to Lord O'Shaughnessy, who was commissioned by the UK government to write a report about how we could recover from the clinical trial shortage. And I mean, I think it's fine to say that he came across being very impressed with what we did. And, you know, I've subsequently heard him mention that the DMD Hub is an exemplar clinical trial network. So, well done us. So now I want to kind of just focus on some of the more specific things that we've developed over this journey for patients. Obviously, one of the first things that we did was to develop a website. And we really thought about the website in terms of who the key stakeholders were, industry, sites, but obviously patients as well at the heart of it. And we wanted the website to be a one-stop shop. And importantly, the website hosts what we call a clinical trial finder. I know that you've heard about the clinical trial finder from several people today and maybe yesterday as well. But I really wanted to emphasize how this clinical trial finder differs from anything else that's out there. So what we knew right from the start is we didn't want it to be, you know, it's not just replicating clinicaltrials.gov. The importance of the clinical trial finder that we've developed is that it provides timely and accurate information about Duchenne trials in the UK. And when I mention timely and accurate, that then translates into lots of effort going into making sure that the information on the clinical trial finder is up to date. And that is only possible because we work within this network. So we work within a network where we get information from industry about trials that are coming to the UK, and we make sure that the information about that particular trial is put onto the website, you know, before that trial is actually opening, or when it opens for the first time at one particular trial site. And we work with the staff at the sites that are running those trials so that we know when it is going to open, when it's recruiting, when it's close to recruitment. So it is a lot of effort. But this is where, you know, we've had more than 60 trials that are on there now, and 28 of them are active, and 14 of them are recruiting. So I would encourage you to have a look at the clinical trial finder, and it is searchable. So if there's a particular trial that, you know, a site that you're interested in, or you know that there's a, you know, something that you wouldn't want to do as part of a trial, you can filter it that way. So like I said, we set that up quite early on, and it worked well. But then we also realized that we could do even better than that. And the even better than that is the central recruitment database. Because when we had the clinical trial finder, we also have on the website that, you know, where the sites are, what sites are running those trials. So parents and patients were contacting the sites directly, which was causing a little bit of, you know, extra anxiety for the patients and confusion maybe at the sites. So what the process now that we encourage is patients to register into the central recruitment database, and that for all sites that want to recruit or have spaces to recruit out of area patients, that they recruit them from the central recruitment database. The Central Recruitment Database is a centrally coordinated national database, which its primary aim, the reason we set it up, was to facilitate recruitment to clinical trials. It was launched in 2021, so we piloted it for a couple of years to make sure that the processes were, what patients were happy with, but also that it worked within the infrastructure that we developed. At the moment, we have more than 280 patients that are registered on the CRD, and they come from all across the country, 28 North Star sites. The success of the CRD is that we've had 45 patients recruited onto clinical trials from the Central Recruitment Database, and that has been at 10 different clinical trials. I think probably the most important statistic that I can say is that, for every site, for every trial that's opened in the UK since we have launched the Central Recruitment Database, there has been a patient that's been recruited from the CRD. And this is just a lovely picture because Charlie was one of the first patients that was recruited through the Central Recruitment Database to a gene therapy trial, and his mum Jennifer was kind enough to allow us to use this quote to basically, demonstrate to people that, it works, and she was really grateful for that. I won't go into too much detail here because Bushra is going to talk about Paladin, but what I wanted to do is just assure you, also following on from what Volker said in his talk, that the clinical trial finder and the Central Recruitment Database are going to be embedded into infrastructures moving forward, in particular the Duchenne UK patient platform, to try and make all of this work that we do, that's quite labour intensive, more streamlined. And then in terms of what else is next, our new priorities, it's a really exciting time for us in the DMD Hub. We're just about to move into the third phase. So we're really taking time to think about, what is it, what's the added value that we're going to bring in the third phase, other than, continuing obviously the good work that we've done and what we've developed so far. And what we understand is, we need to become more inclusive. We need to think about the adult population with Duchenne. We want to boost capacity for translations, so think about what happens after clinical trials, because we're starting to get those success stories, but also think about sustainability. We can't ask that Duchenne UK invests another £3.5 million in the DMD Hub, so what are we going to do about that? To expand the network, we are going to be trialling what we call a hub and spoke model, and working with adult sites. In terms of hub and spoke model, I mean by that we would basically have the hub sites where the trial may take place, but then we're going to be working with spoke sites where some of the follow-up visits might happen, for example. And this is good for everybody, as far as I can tell. At sites, it's going to relieve some of the capacity issues that they have, so we won't be turning trials away. For industry, it's good because we won't be turning trials away. And for patients, it's going to help reduce some of that travel burden that they might have if they're taking part in a trial at a site that's a little bit further away from where they live. So this is the additional North Star sites, which makes perfect sense. We're really lucky in the UK that we have this network of clinical sites that, hopefully are going to be engaging with us more. And then the next step on from that is to think about the adult patients, as I mentioned. And again, this has come up because there's more and more trials that are starting to initiate or non-ambulatory or adult patients, so over the age of 15. Most of the sites that we have in the hub network are paediatric sites, so we have to start to think about, how are we going to make sure that we can run these trials for patients, adult patients, and also think about how we can facilitate the transition of clinical trials, so from a paediatric to an adult site, and think about how we're integrating research into care, which is, it's very helpful that I work very closely with Kathy on DMD Care on. And then this was touched upon, by Emily in her opening comments. We are well aware of, issues around early access and approved treatments. And I can't stand here and tell you that we have the answers and we know exactly what we're going to do, but what we do know is that we need to work together on it, that we need to work between research and care and come up with a plan of how we're going to make sure that access to treatments are available as soon as they possibly can be. We're aware of the challenges, and we're aware that we will have this as a priority, and Duchenne UK will keep you updated on what is decided as soon as it is decided. And then, not to kind of put too much emphasis on it, but sustainability is a key part, and working with industry is one thing that we are looking at how we can bring funding into the DMD Hub, because, essentially these tools and services that we have developed are, useful for industry. They save them time, they save them money, so it is appropriate that that then is reinvested back into the DMD Hub. And I just wanted to also reassure you that, everything that we do in terms of this is very patient-focused, and patients' voice is integrated into these services. We have patients on our advisory committees. We've recently set up a patient review panel that's helping to look at patient-facing documents as well. So my four take-home messages, I added one at the last minute, was it's just to emphasise that the DMD Hub is an established infrastructure enabling UK trials to happen and impacting that trial delivery. We're working with the key stakeholders, always for the benefit of patients. We have developed resources that will be embedded into sustainable infrastructures, and the focus on new priorities that are relevant and timely. So hopefully I haven't gone too far over, and there will be questions afterwards, yeah.